Collapse file number 20. Subject: Z-Best Incorporated, spelled with 4 Zs, of Reseda, California, founded by a 16-year-old in his parents' garage. Peak stock market value, $280 million. Auction value of everything the company actually owned, $62,000. Cause of death: by the prosecutor's arithmetic, 9/10 of the business never existed. This is the Collapse Files. 1987. America has a new prodigy. He is 21 years old. On paper, he is worth $100 million. Wall Street analysts adore him. Oprah wants him on the show. And his business, the thing all that money supposedly comes from, is cleaning carpets. What did the money actually come from? Open the file. Reseda, California, 1982. Barry Minkow is 16 years old, a high school sophomore running a carpet cleaning company out of his parents' garage. 3 employees, 4 telephones. He works the phones after class. Here is the problem nobody tells teenage founders. Carpet cleaning is a terrible business. Margins are thin, customers haggle, checks bounce. The company cleans real carpets for real customers and loses money doing every one of them. A normal 16-year-old would fold. Instead, prosecutors would later document the early repertoire: checks floated between banks, jewelry reported stolen for the insurance money, charges quietly padded onto customers' credit cards. The habits that end this story were there at the very start of it. Because Minkow has discovered the adult economy's great secret. Nobody lends money to what you are. They lend money to what you can document. So the company sprouts a second division: insurance restoration, repairing buildings after fires and floods, paid for by insurance companies. Big contracts, professional clients, steady paper, banks love it. The restoration contracts start small: a fire-damaged office here, a flooded corridor there. Then they grow: $1 million, $4 million, $7 million. By the time the company files to go public, insurance restoration is 86% of all reported revenue. January 1986. The company lists on NASDAQ. That December, a public offering closes, and Barry Minkow, still not old enough to rent a car, becomes one of the youngest founders in American history to take a company public. The stock climbs. By February 1987, it trades at $18 a share. There is a red Ferrari. There are television cameras. There is a motto: the sky is the limit. The restoration division, 86% of everything, the engine of the entire valuation, did not exist. Not inflated, not exaggerated, invented. There were no contracts, no clients, no buildings. The only real part was the carpet cleaning, the part that lost money. A fraud this size needs a supporting cast. Tom Paget, an insurance claims adjuster who agrees to play the part of a client. Together, they invent a company, Interstate Appraisal Services, whose entire function is to exist at the end of a telephone line. When a banker calls to verify a multi-million-dollar restoration contract, Interstate answers. A real voice, on real letterhead, confirms the fake job. The banker hears exactly what due diligence is supposed to sound like. Behind Paget stands Mark Moores, the financial consultant, manufacturing the paper trail, thousands of documents, invoices, contracts, work orders, checks, enough paper to build an entire company. And because the contracts pay nothing, there being no contracts, the machine runs on borrowed money. New loans repay old ones. Fresh investors pay off stale ones. It is a Ponzi scheme wearing a carpet cleaner's uniform. From outside, none of it shows. Analysts see a growth company with audited statements. Brokers see a stock that only climbs. When short sellers in California start asking whether the Sacramento contract is real, the paper, as always, answers every question. Standing between this machine and the public markets is an audit firm, Ernst & Winnie, one of the largest in the world. And in the autumn of 1986, the engagement partner, Larry Gray, asks the question the whole scheme depends on. Can we see one of the restoration sites? Understand what is being asked. Not paperwork. Moores can print paperwork. A building, a real, physical, multi-million-dollar restoration job, which is a problem because in the entire United States, there is no such building. The site Gray wants to see is in Sacramento, reported as a $7 million contract, the largest on the company's books. Minkow does not stall, he does not confess, he greenlights a theatrical production. Paget and Moores find a building still under construction, never burned, never flooded, simply unfinished, and secure access. On the weekend before the visit, the set dressing begins. But first, Exhibit A. Before any visit, Minkow requires the auditors and lawyers to sign a confidentiality agreement. Read the clause that congressional investigators would later single out. Quote, "We will not make any follow-up telephone calls to any contractors, insurance companies, the building owner, or other individuals involved in the restoration contract." End quote. Sit with that. The people whose one job was verification signed a promise not to verify, and then went to look at the scenery. At the site, company placards hang at every conspicuous corner. The security guard has been paid to greet the visitors and to know, in advance, exactly why they have come. Larry Gray tours an undamaged, half-built office building dressed up as a finished restoration job. He sees placards, he sees a helpful guard, he sees flaws. The tour, the case records note, went off as planned. The audit comes back clean. Value unlocked, a clean audit opinion beneath a 9-figure valuation. Measured strictly by return on investment, the Sacramento performance is the best business the company ever did. April 27, 1987. The Oprah Winfrey Show. America's favorite boy wonder tells the audience to think big, be big. The stock is near its peak. The company he is describing does not, in the main, exist. 11 days earlier, the company had announced its masterstroke, a $25 million acquisition of KeyServe, the authorized carpet cleaner for Sears, financed by Drexel Burnham Lambert. The fake company is about to swallow a real one. And then the whole thing dies. Not because of the auditors, not the bankers, not the regulators, because of a credit card charge. Years earlier, Minkow's operation had a habit of padding customers' credit card charges. Most victims grumbled and moved on. One did not. A Los Angeles secretary, overcharged a few $100s, spent months building a file of her own, a case file of other victims. Then she handed it to the Los Angeles Times. May 22, 1987. The Times runs the story on the front of its business section. Behind the whiz kid, a trail of false credit card billings, $72,000 worth, from the company's early years. $72,000. Against a $280 million valuation, it is a rounding error. But it is a documented lie in print with his name attached, and documented lies invite people to go looking for others. The unraveling takes weeks, not years. The board hires outside lawyers. Drexel withdraws its financing on June the 1st. The auditors walk out the door on June the 2nd, days before the KeyServe deal was due to close. On July the 2nd, Barry Minkow resigns, citing health reasons. Within days, the company he founded is suing him. Within weeks, it is in bankruptcy. When the assets are finally auctioned, the company Wall Street, priced at $280 million, fetches some $62,000. The real-world value of a few vans, a few machines, and some office furniture. The shareholders, retail investors, retirement money, people who believed the audited numbers, are wiped out almost entirely. The banks that lent against Interstate's phone calls eat their loans. The trial confirms the arithmetic. Convicted on every count against him: racketeering, securities fraud, money laundering, mail fraud. 25 years in prison, $26 million in restitution. He is 23 years old. He serves 7.5, and here, where most files end, this one turns again. Barry Minkow walks out of prison, by all accounts a changed man. He becomes the pastor of a San Diego church. He founds a fraud investigation firm and starts exposing other people's frauds, real cases, real results. The FBI takes his calls. America loves a redemption arc. In 2011, the fraud investigator pleads guilty to securities fraud. for helping drive down the stock of a homebuilder he was supposedly investigating and trading on the movement. 5 more years, $583 million in restitution. In 2014, he pleads guilty again to embezzling more than $3 million from his own congregation, from the donations over a decade of Sundays. File number 20 is closed. It has been closed twice before.